Welcome to Connecting the Dots, a non-traditional legal program with your host and trusted advisor, Liz Myska, your guide through the web of life's dilemmas.
Welcome to another edition of Connecting the Dots. I'm your host, Liz Myska. It is 2022, and my first guest of the year is Jason Homer.
Hello. I'm honored to be the first guest of the year. I did not know I was getting that privilege.
You are my first guest, my friend, and please tell my audience who you are and what you do here in the city of Worcester.
Certainly. My name is Jason Homer, and I'm the Executive Director for the Worcester Public Library.
Does that mean you are a librarian?
I am a librarian. The position actually used to be called head librarian. That was what it's been called since...
Time immemorial?
Yes, since 1850 whatever.
Really?
And so they renamed it Executive Director because they're well aware that being a library director is so much more than just cultivating the books. We're working on cultivating a culture, creating space, solving access problems, and it's much more nuanced than just the traditional head librarian.
You're making me think, Jason, that several years ago when I started losing my sight and started doing advocacy work, it was the libraries that I was pointed towards. Mm-hmm. And what you just said about the libraries being like the hub of social activity, and I'd never thought about that. I guess I'm a throwback to my childhood where the library was, no doubt, the library was sacred. I loved the library. But I never thought of it as I thought always of it as a quiet space, a place to research. But I never thought of it as a social gathering place. And from what you just said, that is, it's been reconstituted in a way, or maybe
it has. The thing is, our understanding of information has changed so much in the last 2 decades. You no longer go to the library for, what's the capital of Bolivia, because you can just look that up on your phone, or you can just look that up online. So because people's ability to access information has changed, how a librarian approaches information had to change with that. So it was about creating wraparound services, finding where we're missing. Does the internet really help all people? And the answer to that, we know, is no. Mm-hmm. But we also learned as technology grew, technology also became a social determinant of health. And look at access to vaccines, right? Remember early vaccinations, you'd have to be up at 3 a.m. refreshing the CVS website to get a vaccine. Well, that's something that we can help people do at the library. Obviously not at 3 a.m.
Right.
I'm going to go to sleep. I do sleep sometimes. But that approach to information, how people access, and that's really been our guiding principle, is access. And so in the beginning it was books were too expensive. How do you get access to books? You go to the library. And then it became movies and all of the other things. And now we have projectors that you can check out, laptops you can check out, and a whole host of things. Really? And so we do think that we've stayed true to the mission of a public library in that space. We do still have some quiet spaces, but also a lot of spaces that aren't that quiet anymore. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And try to be the learning place for everyone to feel welcome. Wow.
And you came on board in 2020,
December of 2020. Okay. So, we're last peak middle of December. I was like, let's start a new job.
Why not? Why not? Look for a challenge, right?
Yeah. So I was actually very excited to be selected. It was a long search between the previous head librarian and the new executive director. About 18 months spaced us out. And I had an amazing time being the director in Natick prior to coming here. But I was really excited to work with more at-risk communities, dig in a little bit more. Here in Worcester, the Worcester Public Library also houses our Talking Book Library, which is a sub-regional library for those with low or no vision, as well as physically disabled who can't hold books. So there's a lot of challenges and opportunities within those challenges in Worcester. So the moment it was available, I came running on in,
knocking.
even though there's a whole pandemic to deal with.
I know, really.
Pandemic, new job, it's okay.
Well, it sounds like you can, you're like Charles Atlas. You can handle, you can handle anything, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping to become bored one day because we're like done with construction, renovations, pandemic. I look forward to being bored, but I don't think Worcester's going to give me that age.
No, well, I think your timing is impeccable because you had mentioned renovation. In 2021, the new door on the Franklin Street side was inaugurated.
Yes.
And the children's room moved.
It moved, yes.
But please describe, because the architecture of that end of the building, I guess, the Franklin Street, as opposed to the Library Way, that is less aesthetically pleasing, even for someone like me. What's the bump out called?
We call it the ellipse.
The ellipse, that's right. I knew that.
Right. We have a name for it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so in 2001, it's actually a really interesting tidbit of information that not many people know is when they first went for the grant through the state, the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners often help municipalities build libraries through a grant process, and that's what they used in 2001. And when they went through that grant process, there originally was a front door. And then over time it changed. So I have the 1998 rendering, which looks very different than what was completed in 2001. And so that area is a sandstone building. It's actually the same color as the Yale's library, if you didn't know that.
Okay.
And so I think that's where the sandstone inspiration comes from. So it's kind of warmer, which is a perfect juxtaposition to the original building that was in that site, which was built in 1962. That's that cold, brutalist architecture that really kind of goes against our mission of, you belong here, and because
Forbidding.
It's not very welcoming. So the exciting piece of this renovation was now that we have a front door, we can actually be welcoming. Come on out of off the common. If you're skating in the winter, participating in any of the things happening in the common, come on into the public library. We're also, on the other side of the building where the municipal lot is, on the other side of that is also Polar Park. So we're being really surrounded by things. So our goal was to create as much of a welcoming environment as possible.
And the children's room, talk about the children's room, because I was privileged to go. Not with children, but with medical students. So I guess they were once children, and they were blindfolded when they went in there, which also was extremely interesting because people who are sighted do not know how to use their hands. They stand with their hands, by their sides and wait for people to describe something to them, and maybe someone will describe it appropriately or kind of fumble and put something in your hand. But blind people like to actually touch things and then say, oh, what is this? And not have it be a guessing game. Have someone say, do you know what that is? But anyway, there's a rocket ship.
So we moved the children's room used to be on the first floor in that 2001 building. But when you have a front door and you have kids, guaranteed a kid. I was a runner as a kid, and I would have been at the Peanut before anyone even found me. So they needed to move the children's room. It also helped us kind of create a space separate and safe for kids, so that if they do run out, we know where they are. That wasn't really something available when I was on the first floor. So now we moved up to the third floor, and that space is framed by these large books that you can go up and touch, and they say things like gather and learn, and that is what frames the entrance. So when you walk in, there's this fabulous LED backlit ceiling that is meant to look like a Milky Way galaxy, and it's very whimsical in how it moves and snakes throughout the ceiling. And then in the center is that rocket that you're talking about, and that rocket is meant to be an interactive experience for kids. To give them a sense of play, because what we know about children and learning and play is that children who are able to play create scenarios in which they experience other opinions, become more empathetic people, and better learners because they're better able to pivot between two different topics and be better critical thinkers, and again, more empathetic people, and we could always use a little bit more empathy right now.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, the medical student who was guiding me that day, Nick, we went into the children's room in the ellipse portion, and there was a dollhouse.
Yes.
And was he blind? No, he wasn't blindfolded. He wasn't blindfolded then. And I was picking things up, and I have some vision, but I was picking things up and saying, "Oh, this is a bathtub," and I said, "But the handle's not in the right place," in this miniature bathtub. and there was so the parts of the dollhouse were movable,
Yes.
and it was just very interesting. He handed me the couch, and it's like, "Oh, this is like the old English, like horsehair couch," because it was very, very uncomfortable, not ergonomically
None at all.
correct. So, it stimulated my sense of play with, again, like what room is this? Also the flooring in the dollhouse. I would say, oh well, this is going to be the bathroom or the kitchen because it's it feels like linoleum or it feels like plastic or whatever. So again, extremely impressive. For encouraging people's curiosity and imagination.
Exactly.
So now I've been extolling about sight loss, and you had mentioned the Talking Book Library, and you were one of my dignitaries for my 2021 White Cane Awareness Day.
Yes.
So and you were one of 8. And you were the most relaxed. So
I had full trust in the system, and probably a little too much trust, because if you told me to turn, I would have just turned. And that's because I really wanted to embrace. I mean, I will say that I had so much fun, but I also think that I treated it with a lot of respect in having that, because it was. I wasn't going to try to figure this piece out. I was going to let my guide tell me about it, ask questions, get some clarification. But I mean, we talked about play and empathy is exactly what I was doing. For kids is exactly what I was doing with White Cane Awareness Day, because I needed to really understand what it felt like to experience new places. And there was at one point that I was pretty sure that I was safe on a sidewalk, and I was apparently just on an island in the middle of some traffic, and they were like, "Scoot in just in case," and I was like, "How close am I to the edge?" But it was deciding to trust the process and trust my guide, who was amazing, detailed, never really felt that I was at all at risk. I knew that I was in capable hands, and I just wanted to learn how to use a cane to figure out what a sign says, or find that sandwich sign that actually is in the middle of the walkway. I think I walked pretty hard into the one of the parking meters where I was supposed to just walk up to it. I was like, boom, and just going towards it. I was like, I got this. Oh, well, I found it.
Yeah.
And being able to really just embrace that, so that I can go back and observe how people interact with library buildings and figure out what I need to do to better that. And that's the only way I'm going to be able to lean in on that learning, is to just fully trust the process. So I had a blast. Probably a little bit too much trust, but that's okay.
Well, again, the first time I heard you was at a virtual meeting for the Commission on Disabilities, now called the Accessibility Access Commission, and you were describing on the new features of the library. And then subsequently, when I met you in person, we were talking about accessing doors, and and again, the difference between someone like me who's actually going to go up to a door, or as opposed to someone on wheels in a wheelchair who is more than likely going to look for the actuator, the button to push, so that the doors will open. Exactly. And that's, again, I would not have known the distinction until I started losing my sight, that we, as cane users, white cane users, we are taught to actually go up to a door, encounter the door, feel for the handles, which way, is it opening in, is it opening out, is it pushing, are you pulling, or whatever. And so, again, your receptivity to listening to different individuals with different challenges is most impressive. So,
well, I'm a librarian because I love to learn.
Right.
That's the core of why I went to library school, was you never stop learning in a library,
right,
because there's always new things to learn. There's always more information to get, and that's one of my favorite things about working with, groups like the. I don't remember what the commission.
VIPs.
Well, no, I meant the commission on.
Commission, AAC or
AAC.
COD.
I couldn't remember what their acronym was.
Right,
anymore.
I know.
But with groups like that, I did 2 tours back to back, wildly different outcomes from the tours because there were different people, and that really speaks to the fact that when you're serving people, you really have to talk to them about the need, and because one of the first things that you and I talked about in that was I was bringing up the button piece, and you were like, I don't use a button. I was like, okay, that's a new information.
Right.
And it's really helpful information and has helped every time I think about the first time I described the building versus how I describe it now is so exponentially more detailed because I'm asking people what they need to know, not just answering a question or trying to answer this one question like it's going to serve the people who are in the wheelchairs, people with canes, or the people who might not even have the ability to lift their head, right? And you have to change every single situation to match that, which I think might sound daunting, but is probably the most exciting because it's the best way to justify. You've thought about all of the ways to justify or explain something, and the storyteller in me loves that.
And and the other thing that really impressed me about you is you commented, thank you for being vulnerable, because you were giving voice to the fact that not everybody speaks up. Other people may feel intimidated, or they fear if they say something, other people will kind of like hoot them down and say, don't do that. And that impressed me when you.
We spend a lot of time making sure that our hair looks a certain way, we behave a certain way, and we fit within our social pieces. And then to me, what I really loved, and I did thank you for the vulnerability. You were like, I'm just going to try to figure out the store on my own and talk you through, which was enlightening to me to say, okay, this is how someone with low or no vision interacts with these doors, and what can we do to change that interaction, to better that interaction, to make it make more sense, and just being willing to do that. It's like standing up and doing a report in front of class, right? You have to have some vulnerability there, and I really appreciated the ability to work through that. And obviously, in my time on the tour, did I expect us to spend 5 minutes on a door? No. But did I learn a lot in those 5 minutes? I absolutely did. And that's what was so fun for me. And then, being able to see how that translates. And that's kind of why I went so fearless into White Cane Day, because you have to be fully vulnerable in order to grow. We don't grow in times of comfort. We only grow in times of discomfort. We don't want too much discomfort to get to the panic, but if you're content and you're comfortable, you don't grow. and again, I'm a librarian because I love to learn.
Right.
So.
Well, and I think again that just having the notion that this is a safe space to fumble and falter and and learn, and not think, I got this covered.
Yeah.
Why do I need to go there? Mm-hmm. I can do it. Why do I need to go to the library? I can do it from the comfort of my home, or I don't know what to ask when I get there. So I guess I'm saying the people component, the vulnerability and the trust aspect, those are people components.
Yes.
The information is there.
Yep.
But as you said at the beginning, how do we access that information? Well, it's got to be, conversation, discourse. That's what it's got to be, not just, again, over there, and have somebody point.
Yes, pointing now.
Pointing.
But I grew up with the Magic School Bus book series. It was one of my favorite things to read when I was a kid. And I also loved watching the television show based on that. And Miss Frizzle always said, take chances, make mistakes. And that has been my guiding principle since the moment I learned it. You have to take chances. You have to be willing to make mistakes. And that's the only way that you're going to be a better version of yourself. And the other thing we think about so much in the last 2 years, which have been obviously a nightmare for everyone. We're in a nightmare scenario. Yes. We'll not make light of it. But what we're learning is that the push for human connection is more important into our intrinsic beings than anything else.
Yes.
This is how we get people to trust a medical process, which in some cases they have earned the right not to trust it, right? Mm-hmm. But we also learn to trust ourselves. We're a social animal,
yes.
right? And we need these interactions to be better people for our greater good and for our community. And that's the part that's, to me, really invigorating and exciting.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think when I'm being cerebral, when I'm pondering or deep in thought, I look at ageism, ableism, and accessibility. Mm-hmm. Because that's part of the human condition.
Yes.
At different spots in your life, you are going to be experiencing discomfort or discrimination or whatever, and again, we don't want to be uncomfortable, but if we're not uncomfortable, how are we ever going to change? How are we ever going to learn from it? How are we going to make things better? So I think one of the qualities that I hopefully am blessed with is a childlike wonder of not knowing. I mean, there's no way, even though I'm a lawyer, and again, lawyers are portrayed as, we know all the answers. It's not. We don't know all the answers. We research, we analyze, we figure things out, and then we advise, we counsel, but we don't. Hopefully, we don't impose.
Yes.
We don't foist. But that childlike wonder of, wow, I'm learning something new that I never have known before, and how am I going to incorporate this into going forward, and how am I going to spread this to other people? So that they pick up the mantle, and they're it's like an amoeba, and that's my only scientific reference. But because it's moving in all different directions, and you don't know, and that's I think as human beings we want to I want to know, I want to settle, I want to be I don't want to be in this quandary of what's going to happen next, but. Mm-hmm. Again, if the last 2 years of the pandemic have shown anything, it's like we're not in control, and again we have to be flexible, we have to be vulnerable, we have to learn and keep plugging at it. So that's my soliloquy.
Yeah.
I believe we are running short on time. If people have questions about the services of the library, what would you recommend? And again, I know that there's the vaccine clinic is there. How can people find out about what's going on in the library. Who can they call you if they don't have access to a computer or the computer is not accessible?
They most certainly can give us a call. The phone number for the library is 508-799-1650, and that will give you we have reference librarians that sit in this room and they answer questions all day because we have people who call all day. We also have all of our events are both online for people who can use a computer. They can ask the questions on the phone, but we also have a dial a story program through our Talking Book Library, and that phone number, super easy to remember. It's 508-55-2345. 6? Is there? I'm looking at the number. Yes, all right. So easy number to remember, but they also read our newsletter on that. So if you can't see the newsletter, you can listen to a recording of the newsletter, as well as some other stories, including children's librarians tell stories, adult librarians read from chapters of the book. So it's a really way to engage people who might not be able to see the page, see the print, or want to listen to a computer voice read them what the newsletter says. They can call, listen to the newsletter. And so we really try, just like we try with many other ways, to get some level of access to everyone. So if you can use a computer, mywpl.org. If you have to use a phone call us at 1650. If you need to listen to it, call the Talking Book Library. So there's one way we will be able to help you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason, for being my first guest in
well,
2022.
Thank you. I really appreciate that honor.
and I hope many people will avail themselves of the Worcester Public Library.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Join me again for another edition of Connecting the Dots.
That the information provided in this show is not a substitute for consulting with an experienced local attorney and receiving counsel based on the facts and circumstances of a particular transaction. To contact Lizbeth, email her at lizbeth@elizabethlmyska.com or call her office at 508-753-7681. We're online at connectingthedots.lawyer. Executive producers, Lizbeth Myska and Jack Peacock. Producers, John Medberry and Bill Hamilton. A production of Elizabeth L. Myska, JD, LLM, in association with Compliments.
Pull your face mask down. What about the chest guard? It looks loose. Is it loose? Okay, here comes the heat.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to put up with you.